Now, have you ever thought about building your own watch? Well, in today's video, I'm going to show you exactly how you can do just that. What is up everyone? I'm Jason from JB Watch Mods. Welcome back to the channel. Now today I'm going to show you how you can build your very own automatic watch with a day-date complication, and it's probably not as hard as what you think. Now you are going to need a few parts and a few tools, but don't worry, I'll leave everything that you're going to need linked in the description below. Now, before we get into this build, I'm excited to announce that I've just launched a Patreon account for this channel. So over on my Patreon, I'll be offering personalized one-on-one support for all your build needs. If you've got a dream watch in mind that you want to build, but you just can't find the parts or don't know where to start, this could be the perfect way to kickstart your watch modding journey, as I can help you find and source all the parts needed to build your dream watch. So if you're looking to take your watch modding to the next level, get personalized one-on-one support, or just support the content that I make here on this channel, this is your chance to get involved. And if you do sign up to become a Patreon member, you're going to be automatically entered into the watch giveaway that I'm going to be doing every month. Now the watches I plan on giving away are all the ones that I build here on this channel and all the watches I review as well. Hopefully in the future we can kick it up a notch and start giving away some more high-end watches. That is the goal. It's also a chance to be a part of an awesome watch modding community that I hope on building over there. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, head over to my Patreon, which will be linked in the description below. But with that said, let's jump into this build. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is get our dial fitted. Now there are two holes here and here which locate the dial into the movement. And when we grab our dial, we can see on the back side that there are two corresponding dial feet. Now these dial feet align with those holes in the movement, and it's just a press fit. Nothing else is required to hold the dial down. But I do recommend using a bit of double-sided tape to keep that dial down, and you'll see why later on in this video. Now once you've got the dial fitted to the movement, just double check that the dial is sitting flush all the way around the movement. And fitting the dial is as simple as that. So let's move on to our next step, which is getting the movement ready to fit the handset. Now to do this, we need to put the movement to 12 AM. So let's pull the crown out all the way until it is in the time setting position. Then we can turn the crown anti-clockwise until the date flicks over. When the date flicks over, then we know we're at 12 AM and we can set the hands accordingly. And once you see that date wheel starting to move, just go extra slowly so you can stop right on 12 AM. So now we're ready to fit our handset. So let's put our movement down, get our hands, and get our hand press tools. Now obviously our hour hand goes on first, and what I like to do is grab a small bit of Rodeco, which is basically like jeweler's blue tack, roll it up into a cone shape and insert the end of the hour hand into the Rodeco. This allows me to hold on to that hour hand without using any pliers or tweezers and risk damaging that hand by scratching it. Then we just line that hand up with the 12 o'clock marker on the dial, and we can go ahead and press that hand down. Once we've got the hand pressed down, I like to pick up the movement and just double check that the hand is sitting flush and nice and square with the dial. You also need to check your clearances to make sure that the hand doesn't foul on anything like the indices or your logo. And to do this, I just rotate the movement over 2 times just to make sure that it clears everything and get that hour hand back at 12 o'clock. Once everything looks good, we can go ahead, put the movement back in our movement holder and fit the minute hand. And to do this, I use the exact same process. And like we did earlier, once the hand is pressed on, just pick that movement up and just double check that the hour hand and minute hand have sufficient clearance. And at this stage, you want to check that the date wheel flicks over at 12 AM. Now to do this, just wind the movement back over 2 times until the time is showing 12 AM and just make sure that that date wheel flicks over. 10 to 15 minutes either side of 12 AM is fairly standard. Now we can move on to our last hand and possibly the most challenging hand, which is the second hand. Now I use the exact same technique as the previous hands for setting this hand. I think that the key is to have good lighting, and having the movement at eye level definitely helps. And once that hand is pressed on, we'll pull it out and do our final checks, pushing the crown in to make sure that that second hand ticks away as it should. And also making sure that all the hands clear each other. Now earlier in the video I mentioned that it might be a good idea to use some double-sided tape to hold the dial down to the movement, and you're about to see why. While adjusting the time on the movement, turning the hands over, I've managed to somehow wiggle the dial loose from the movement, as you can see from this shot here. And this has caused the hands to come in contact with the dial, leaving a nice round scratch on the dial face. Luckily, I had a spare dial and hand set, so off camera I went ahead and decided to start again. But now back to where we left off, which is getting the case ready to accept the dial and the movement. So let's remove our case back gasket and the movement spacer. Then we can start cleaning our crystal. So to clean the crystal, I just use an air blower and a lens pen. This combination has gotten me the best results over the years and I can't beat it. Just take your time with this step and make sure that that crystal is super clean, because the last thing that you want is having any dust or hair on the dial once the watch is completed. So to fit our movement into the case, we need to remove this dummy crown stem. Now to do that, there is a small button on the back side of the movement which needs to be depressed, which is right here. And once that button is depressed, you'll be able to pull the crown stem straight out. Then we can go ahead and fit our movement spacer, which basically just sits on the outside of your movement. Just be sure to line up the cutout with the crown stem hole in the movement. And in this case, that spacer is a necessity as it holds the movement firm within that case. Now we're ready to pair the movement with the case. And just double check that that movement spacer is sitting all the way down, nice and flush against the case. Now before we can put our case back on and seal this case up, we need to cut and fit our crown stem. So let's unscrew this crown, pull it out and grab our new crown stem that comes with the movement that we're using. Now to start off, I'm going to screw my crown straight onto this crown stem so I can see how it's looking. Now you can see here that our crown is still sticking out around 8 or 9 millimeters. So let's pull this crown stem back out and chop that length off with our side cutters. Then we can retest it and see how it's looking. Now this may not be the best method of cutting your crown stem to the right length. It's probably a good idea to use some kind of measuring device, like a set of vernier calipers, which is what I used to use when I was just starting out. But now that I'm more comfortable, these days I just do it by eye. And one thing I always do now is file smooth the end of the threads once I cut that crown stem. This just makes it easier to screw on the crown and helps prevent damaging the crown threads in any way. So now that we're rechecking this, we can see that the crown stem is still around 4mm too long. So that just means we need to pull this crown stem back out, remove the crown, and cut another 4mm off this crown stem, and hopefully we can cut it to the right length. And this time it looks like we may have nailed the length. So to make sure our crown stem is at the right length, we need to screw that crown down and make sure that it sits flush against the case. Which it does. We also need to make sure that the crown has enough play in it so we can pull the crown out to each position freely. And once we're satisfied that everything is operating as it should, we can pull the crown back out one last time and apply some Loctite to those crown stem threads. This just acts as a bit of insurance to make sure that that crown doesn't come loose unintentionally in the future. I also just use a medium strength Loctite just in case any repairs need to be carried out in the future. And once everything is assembled for the final time, just double check everything to make sure that it's still working as it was before. Now we can work on sealing this case up. So to do that, let's grab our case back and give this crystal a good clean, just as we did with the crystal on the top side. But before we fit our case back, we need to do one more thing, which is install our case back gasket. Now this gasket acts as a moisture barrier, so it's a good idea to lubricate it in some silicone grease before fitting it. Now this case has a groove in which that gasket sits, but some cases have the gasket located on the case back itself, so just double check your case before fitting. Now we can grab our case back and fit it to the case. And I always start these off by hand before grabbing my case back tool to tighten them down. Sometimes the threads can be a little bit funny, so it's always a good idea to start it off by hand just so you don't risk damaging those threads. And with that, the watch head assembly is complete. So now we are on the home stretch and we can finish this watch off by fitting the bracelet. So on this watch, we're using a presidential style bracelet which has a hidden clasp. These look great, but sometimes they can be a little bit stiff when you buy them from new. So it may take a little while for that clasp to wear in and feel nice and smooth. And fitting the bracelet is fairly straightforward. I like to put the spring bar into the bracelet and then apply pressure to it with my thumb while using a small screwdriver to locate the spring bar into the case one side at a time. And with that side done, all we need to do is repeat the process on the other side, and then this watch is completed. And I must say, I am really happy with how this watch is turning out. We had a small hiccup in the middle there. That is why it's always a good idea to carry some spare parts when building these watches. But with that said, let's flip this watch over and see how it really looks. Today's build. Let me know in the comments below what you think of today's build, and was it easy as you thought it was going to be? Now granted, I did run into a few issues, but it's nothing that can't be solved. Now I do like the day date build, but I feel like this style is just a little bit empty for me, so I think it needs a little bit more work. But I think there is a lot of potential there. If you've liked this video or gotten anything out of it at all, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't, and don't forget to head on over to my Patreon account if you want to support the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.